Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Friday, December the 20th, 2024, which makes this the news for Thursday, December the 19th, day 1030 of Vladimir Putin's genocidal war of choice against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you live from this major European capital, which is under siege. I see the peeps are coming in. Hey, Chef Deb. Hey, PH. How you guys doing tonight? How's everybody doing? Good evening, Cheyenne. Hey, Darlene. Hey, Mark Charles. Bonsoir, mon frère. Ça va? Ça va bien? Grotland, how you doing? Little Red Sunflower. How's everybody doing tonight? Evening, Jackie. Charles Hunt, how do you do? So we do have, I'll tell you, it was a very exciting day for me. That's the wrong word to use. It was a very productive day for me, that's for sure. And I was excited this morning. Hey, Lars, good evening. You guys know I'm an amateur, right? I'm just a guy trying to figure out what the hell is going on in the world and try to make some sense of it. And for the last 3 months, now look, since I've been doing this live, which is over a year now, we always start with last night's missile and drone attack, right? Like that's just what we do. So every morning, I read, I translate and read the announcement from the Ukrainian Air Force, right? The Air Force makes the announcement every morning. And I watch for it, and I read it, and I translate it, and I put it out to you, right? I post it on all my socials. If you're moving to Blue Sky, I'm on Blue Sky. Look for me there. And so I see this thing day in and day out. And you guys know we have talked about it. 3 months ago, hey Bjorn, 3 months ago, the Air Force put a new category on that list. Drones lost. And that's all that they said was lost in location. And I made the assumption, as I think most people did, that these drones were the victims of an electronic warfare campaign. Some way the Ukrainians were messing with them, spoofing addresses, sending them off target, returning them to sender, sending them to Belarus, whatever the case may be, right? There was some component, some probably an electronic warfare component that was taking these drones out that were being lost. Now, then we learned this week that Ukraine has the British Dragonfire laser. And I wondered aloud if maybe it could be the laser that was shooting them down. And then this morning, and this was the big thing to me because we've talked about the fact that the Russians are now producing these drones in 3 flavors out at that plant in Tartaristan, right? There's a plant in Tartaristan where the Russians produce Shahed drones. But they're not all attack drones. They produce attack drones there. They produce reconnaissance drones there. And then they produce decoys there, cheap. And for all we know, all they produce are decoys there. Maybe the attack drones all come from the Iranians still. But the belief is from military intelligence here in Ukraine that they produce these 3 types of drones there. And we know from military intelligence that half of the drones coming into the country are decoys, give or take, about half. And so you have heard me wonder aloud, could it be that the Ukrainians had figured out a way from the radar cross sections or some other mechanism, maybe the way that they navigate, maybe the radio signals that come from them. I don't know. But is it possible that the Ukrainians figured out a way to tell which one is a decoy and which one is an attack drone? And have they been saving the ammunition for the real threats? Because the whole point of the decoys is to overwhelm your air defense and get your guys to run out of ammunition, right? Shooting at ghosts. And today, the Ukrainian Armed Forces announcement read 40 drones, 40 simulator drones lost on location. Simulator drones, or when I use DeepL, the translation was imitator drones. Clearly, now they claimed in today's announcement, they claimed that 40 of the 85 incoming drones were imitators, decoys, and that those were the ones that were lost on location. Now that says to me a couple of things. It says that that new category of lost, I think the Ukrainians were experimenting with electronic warfare, maybe with the lasers, maybe with both. But this was a great opportunity once they were able to identify the imitators, the decoys, and they didn't have to waste the ammunition on them. They could focus on the real targets, the attack drones. And so this report that we've been getting every morning seems to indicate that they've been shooting down the real attack drones and they've been taking out the imitators, the decoys, through some other mechanism. Maybe that's why we've had zero reports of drones in Belarus exploding, right? We haven't had, every single night, drones get returned to Belarus, but we never hear about an explosion in Belarus. What's happening to those drones? Where are they going? Maybe it's just the decoys that are susceptible to the spoofing electronic warfare component. I don't know. I'm speculating. But it is clear that the Ukrainians have identified which ones are the attack drones. And I said it, didn't I? On this live, I said there is no way that the Russians spent the money to build a clone that has the same radar cross signature as a real one. There's no way that they did the R&D. There's no way that they took the time. There's no way that they subjected it to the testing that would be required. No way. Bobby, that's a great question. That is a great question, actually, because the Russians have their own GPS. Now, the Ukrainians are deeply familiar with the Russian version of the GPS. Bobby, I'll tell you, just between you and me, pal, I actually met a woman, a scientist. She did her first dissertation in gravitational waves. Real smart lady, let me tell you. She worked on the original Soviet GPS solution. Really cool lady, I'll tell you. Anyway, clearly, now, unless there was some kind of mistake in today's announcement from the Air Force, but it certainly seems to me that they have changed their language, and that has a meaning. That has a real meaning. And it clearly, to me, says, we have figured out which ones are the decoys, and we don't waste our bullets on them. So all that you're doing, all the money that you're spending, all the people that you've hired, the plant that you've set up so that you can fool us has been a waste of your time. And we've used your decoys to learn more about electronic warfare and how to disable them. We've been learning from you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I swear to God, everything Putin does goes backwards in his face. It's unreal. It's a boomerang life for him. But you wouldn't know it listening to that press conference today. We'll talk about that next. Okay. Now, on the night of the 19th, or overnight last night, the Russians sent 85 attack drones, 45 were shot down, 45 imitator drones were lost in location. Now, the Russians also sent 2 Iskander-Ms and a Kh-59. Those got through. There were no deaths reported, but there were injuries in Kryvyi and in Dnipro. So the 2 Iskander-Ms seem to be headed to Kryvyi. Now, there's 2 targets there that would be the likely targets. The dam, because they want to flood the city out, another war crime, which they've targeted in the past with Iskanders. Or there's some power plants and infrastructure there. It's not clear what the targets were or what was hit at this time. In Kherson, another person was unalive today from a first-person view drone. The human hunt in Kherson is on. And they are not just targeting individuals, but what they're doing is they're sending up drones that have these like spikes. They drop the spikes in front of a moving car so its tires go flat, the car is immobilized, and then the strike drone comes in and takes out the car, as it did recently with a family of 4 in it. The father survived. The little girl is in critical condition. The teenager and the mother were both lost in that attack. It's a sin. Now, let's start with the hypocrisy of Vladimir Putin and the absolute insanity that is Russia. You want to talk about a dystopian state. Russia is, it's like the fucking Soviets read 1984 and thought this must be a how-to manual. That's what the dystopian nightmare of Russia is. And today, as part of his theatrics, Russian President Vladimir Putin had his annual phone-in show with the Russian people, where the great Tsar, the dear leader, sits down and talks to regular folk like he's a man of the people in touch with their needs. I must say this year, I watched for about 40 minutes. I couldn't do the whole 3 hours. And I think it ran longer. I think it ran 4.5 or something. So I watched for about 40 minutes and I could not take the callous, dismissive, because I'll tell you, this year had a grim feeling to it that I've never seen before. You know, they pick the people that are going to ask the questions. They approve the questions beforehand. And so when you see a young couple get on their video call to Putin and all of Russia and say to Putin that because they have an adjustable rate mortgage, they've been unable to make a mortgage payment for 3 months and are facing foreclosure, and all of their investments and all of their savings that they've put into this apartment are going to be gone and they're going to be homeless. That's pretty real. Now, Putin lied about the answer, and he basically made up a government bailout program that, to the best of my knowledge, nobody is working on in Russia. So I don't know if he was just spitballing a solution or just outright lying to try to comfort people in that situation. But he was not very convincing to me. And there was one point where you were very aware of Vladimir Putin's age and health. He kept stammering. He couldn't get the words out. And this was after a Western journalist who had a lot of balls got up and asked a question that clearly had not been approved. Basically, the question was, when you sit down with Ukraine this year, you're going to be in a much weaker position, aren't you, Mr. Putin, than you were last time? And Putin did not like that one bit. and assured the reporter that he disagreed, that he is in a no weaker a position now than he was 2 years ago. That the last 2 years or the last 3 years now, have not weakened Russia, but rather have strengthened her. And he told this reporter to go tell his Western handlers that, because that's what it's all about, Vlad. Bad, sad Vlad went on at some length about a number of things. Let's look at some of the quotes here. I would say that the best summary, the best review of Vladimir Putin's call-in show today was from John Foreman, who's a UK diplomat. He was the defense attaché to both Kyiv and Moscow at one point for the British Ministry of Defense. And he called it, the usual mix of bluster, boastfulness, braggadocio, brown-nosing, and bare-faced lies. And I would have to agree, that really sums up Putin's talk to the nation. He blamed Ukraine, of course, for the lack of progress in negotiations. That Ukraine is the recalcitrant Yahtzee regime, and illegitimate, by the way. The Zelensky government is illegitimate, and he shouldn't deal with them anyway. But there must be people in Ukraine that he could deal with. He insisted. Now, this is the thing that gets my goat. So, if you remember the Battle of Kyiv, the pitched battle for the city of Kyiv, where we saw that column, that 41-kilometer column of tanks and trucks that got stuck and never moved again, right? When Putin was defeated, when his army was soundly defeated in the north of the country here, from here back, pushed back to the border at Belarus, the following New Year's Eve, in his New Year's Eve address, 2022-2023, to the people of Russia, Vladimir Putin's told a lie that he has kept repeating, and he repeated it again today. He told the lie that there had been a peace agreement in Istanbul where everything was settled. Then Boris Johnson came in and told Ukraine that they had to fight to the last man. And Putin only withdrew from Kyiv and the north as a gesture of goodwill to sign this peace agreement, because he was a man of peace. This lie has no basis in faith, in truth, in any way. There is zero evidence to suggest that there was ever an Istanbul Accord, right? Like, history has no evidence that the talks even happened, let alone that they happened. Erdogan was trying to put together talks, don't get me wrong, and he was trying to act as a go-between. But there was no peace agreement, and Boris Johnson denies ever having suggested to Kyiv to reject a peace agreement. So he told that lie again. That was the point at which I had to shut it off. I couldn't take it anymore. He also said Russia is closer every day to fulfilling its goals of the special military operation. Every day, Russia gets closer to fulfilling the goals of the special military operation. Right, like one of the goals was keeping NATO off your borders. How's that going for you, Vlad? It's not going that well, is it? One of the goals was to demilitarize Ukraine. How's that going for you, Vlad? Getting closer every day, buddy. He said that Kyiv must acknowledge the new realities of the front line. Right? They have to give this genocidal lunatic who throws nuclear threats around like I throw compliments around. They have to give him what he wants. or else it's going to go bad for everybody. When asked about the defeat in Syria, he said Russia was not defeated in Syria, that we had accomplished all of our goals and it was time to leave. I mean, are you kidding me? You accomplished all your goals. Like what? Leaving behind a bunch of tanks? For the people who in 1 minute you called the T word, in the next minute your Defense Department started calling the rebels. In the next minute started calling the interim government, and 1 day later were referred to as potential future partners by Peskov. You got to be kidding me. You accomplished your goals. You lost your bases. You lost your jumping off point to Africa. You lost your ability to project power into the Mediterranean and the Middle East and the Dark Continent. You lost $32 billion that you invested in propping up Bashar al-Assad. It's an investment down the drain. And you have the nerve to sit there in front of the Russian people and say you accomplished all your goals in Syria. This lying sack of shit, I don't know how the Russian people take it. Years and years of having any kind of resistance beaten out of them. That's how. And when I say years, I mean centuries, right? The Russian Empire did it to them, the Soviets did it to them, and Vladimir Putin's gangsters have done it to them. The Russian people are not capable of independent thought anymore. They don't have a will of their own. Deranged. The guy is seriously deranged because he went on to make a proposal for a high-tech duel between the Oreshnik and Western missile defenses. Now look, anybody who's paying attention knows that it's virtually impossible for any modern air defense system to intercept 36 independent autonomous reentry vehicles coming in at one time at Mach 11. That's a very difficult thing to do. Very difficult. We know that. Everybody knows that. Not to say that air defense won't try. But what he was proposing was this insanity. I mean, is this not just the bullshit of a child who imagines what it is to be a powerful person? He said, you in the West, you pick a target in Kyiv and put all your missile defense there. I send Oreshnik to blow it up. We see who win. I mean, really, it's like talking to the kid who won't share the swing on the playground when you're 6. So this is his proposal. Now look, you want to do that, pal, you're free to do it anytime. All the missile defense is here. What are you talking about? High-tech duel. 21st century high-tech duel. What the fuck are you talking about? If you had that missile and it was ready to go, you would send it. You know you would. So who is this bullshit for? Like, what is it about? It's about the fact that you don't have the fucking missile. Now, they're said to have 10 of them, right? Intelligence reports indicate that they probably have 10 of these Oreshnik missiles. The thing is, as I understand it, they're having a problem with the payload. That's why it came in to Dnipro unarmed, no explosives, just the re-entry impact of 36 re-entry vehicles at about Mach 11, which is, really something. Anyway, how many will go boom in fueling? That's another good point, Common Sense, because the 2 working models that they produced, one they sent to Dnipro, right? The other one back in September, was a launch failure. It blew up on the launch vehicle. So right now they have a 50% success rate with launching it. Oh, and by the way, each one costs $120 million. And you know, the Russians have lots of money to throw around right now. Sarmats are going off in the silos. I mean, every time they use one, the ruble drops 20%. Okay, now, before we go to the front line, let's talk about a couple of things, particularly how busy Ukrainian Air Force and air assault was last night. Holy shit. And part of this is Storm Shadow hits inside Russia. Again, there are lots of bots claiming that since the Oreshnik was used against Dnipro, Ukraine is too afraid to use Western weapons in Russia. This is nonsense. We have likely 2 occurrences of storm shadows just last night. One of them is said to have struck the Tagmet Ironworks in Taganrog. So right across the border from Mariupol in Rostov-on-Don, or should we call it Rostov-on-Don. Last night, there was a coordinated missile and drone attack against the ironworks. Now, this ironworks the size of it has about doubled since the start of the war. So this is some kind of critical frontline maintenance, repair, production facility. It appears to be. It's not impossible that they have the forges in there to make barrels for artillery, barrels for tanks. Right now, the Russians can only produce about 20 barrels a month to the best of our knowledge. And they are losing about 320 barrels a month. So that's a real problem that's going to catch up with them before long. So the ironworks was hit. And we believe that that was storm shadows. Now, the only confirmation that we have that it was storm shadows came from the Russian side. On the Telegram channels, they're showing off storm shadow debris. Now, there is another possible hit. Some outlets are reporting that the hit on the Kombinat Kamansky rocket fuel plant in Rostov was also storm shadows, also a coordinated drone and storm shadow attack where the drones come in first, you try to use up air defense with the drones or take air defense out with the drones, and then the missiles come in behind that. And that was quite a hit. It started a fire on the territory of the plant. It appears that the plant was struck in 3 locations by at least 3 missiles. And they may have been storm shadow. The Russians indicate that, but the problem is they're showing the same fragments in those pieces as they're showing for the ironworks plant. So it's unclear which one of those was really the storm shadow target, or both were. Now, in Rostov region again, the Ukrainians hit the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery. This is a big refinery, one of the largest in Russia. It's been hit 4 times. The last time was in June, I believe, March and June of this year. It was operating at only 50% capacity before this hit. After last night's hit with Ukrainian-made missiles, it's unclear whether they were Samsans, Peklos, or Polonitsas, but they are said to have been hit with Ukrainian-made drones. It is unlikely that the plant will be in production at all. The crude oil distillation unit for the plant was directly struck and is said to be destroyed. That's very hard to replace. And without it, you can't refine crude oil. So it looks as though that plant is shutting down, baby. Shutting down and going to stay shut down for a while. So 3 major missile strikes on the territory of Russia in Rostov alone last night. The ironworks, the oil refinery, and the rocket fuel plant. Additionally, Ukrainian drones are said to have swarmed into Bryansk, Belgorod, and Kursk regions, but no word on what was hit, if anything, from those. Zelensky was in Brussels with Mark Rutte, and then he met with Emmanuel Macron as well. Zelensky said that we will discuss how to secure Ukraine, how to strengthen our people, and of course our army, with particular attention to air defense. On Telegram, Mark Rutte posted saying that the meeting was important and very substantive, and he promised he saw the request from Zelensky for 19 air defense systems, and he pledged those 19 air defense systems on behalf of NATO. So now look, we don't know what the makeup of them is, when they'll get here, if they'll be here in time to help us through the winter with the energy infrastructure that's constantly under pressure from Russian missile strikes. But he promised 19 more air defense units. So after meeting with Rutte in Brussels, Zelensky met with Emmanuel Macron. And Emmanuel Macron has committed France to training 2 additional Ukrainian brigades. And they continued discussion of French peacekeepers on the ground in a demilitarized zone between Ukraine and Russia. It is so smart of them. Zelensky is so smart, right? He knows that under no circumstances is Vladimir Putin going to have NATO troops patrolling the Donbass. That is not gonna happen, right? So what does he do? He gets the British and the French to say, hey, would you guys send troops in? You know Putin's never gonna agree, so you're never gonna have to. So would you just say you're going to? He could have said that. And a calculated response from those guys would be, yeah, let's go. I'll go along with that. And we'll get Donald Trump on our side too, because it's Trump's plan. We know it'll never work, but let's go along with it and it'll be good for us and Trump. Okay. And it looks to me like that's what these guys are doing. And Putin is never, ever going to go for it. Never, ever. Mel, on the subject of the British Dragonfire laser weapon, all that we know is that the Brits gave some to the Ukrainians who then turned it into a weapon of their own that they call the Trident. And they now claim to be the 5th country in the world to have such weapons. What they're doing with them is unknown at this time, though I strongly suspect that some part of their development and testing process was initiated against Russian decoy drones. And here's why. Oh, we got an air alert in Kyiv. I can hear the sirens going off right now. Okay, anyway, here's why I say that. As of today, it appears that we can say with confidence that the Ukrainians have been able to tell the difference between the decoy drones and the real drones since at least 3 months ago. So for the last 3 months, the Ukrainians have had a prototype laser weapon, and they've had a bunch of targets that it didn't really matter whether they shot down or not. What a perfect target to test your weapon on. It makes too much sense to me, right? And they've reportedly said that they can shoot down planes at 2 kilometers altitude. How do they know that? How do they know that? Maybe because they've been field testing this thing every fucking night for the last 3 months. Now, look, I'm not suggesting that that's the only countermeasure that was deployed against these decoy drones. Quite the opposite. I would bet you that once they were sure that they knew these are the decoys, these are the attack drones, mark the attack drones for a targeting solution, and leave the other ones for research and development. That's a live target in the air. Let's see what we can do to it. And that to me is an opportunity that I don't think the Ukrainians would have passed up. I just don't. Now, again, I don't know that. I want to say very clearly that I don't know that. But today's announcement from the MOD that 40 simulator drones or decoy drones were taken out with something that we're not telling you what it is, it made me happy. Anyway, okay. South Korean intelligence. Now, 2 days ago, everybody was talking about the massive losses in Kursk. But the only numbers that were reported were 30 to 50 killed in action, right? So that didn't seem right to me. So we waited a day, and then we got the Pentagon saying that there are several hundred casualties among the North Koreans. Today, we got South Korean intelligence saying that there were 100 North Koreans KIA in Kursk and 1,000 plus casualties. 1,000. This is according to South Korean intelligence. Now, how South Korean intelligence knows what's going on in Kursk is a good question. But that is what South Korean intelligence is reporting. And so the number just keeps getting bigger and the videos keep getting worse. I do not recommend you go looking for them. Okay, now, politicians are the worst. You know, politicians are really the worst. I mean, you've heard me lament on American politicians, right? Yeah, Messi, I'm back. London, the UK made an announcement. The defense secretary, which is different from the minister of defense, Lamy, it's this other guy, Edward something. They have both a minister and secretary of defense. So the defense secretary was in Kyiv and he announced a new $286 million package for Ukraine of electronic warfare, defense radars, marine drones, loitering drones, boats, respirators, 90,000 charges for 155 millimeter shells. That's that big white powder thing that goes in the chamber after the shell goes in, right? The charge, you need both of the shell and the charge. So the UK is ponying up 90,000 of them. That's like 45 days worth of shells on the front line. So the UK does all this and makes all these grand statements about how we're with Ukraine and we're going to significantly be increasing our support for Ukraine moving forward. But then it turns out that 186 million pounds of this 225 million pound package came out of the International Fund for Ukraine that the UK just administers. It's not UK money. So this kind of thing is very disappointing to me. They had no reason to do this, to make all these grand pronouncements and say there's all this money that we're giving you, without mentioning that the money was coming from a double dozen different European partners, which is really where it's coming from. Particularly Scandinavia and Iceland contribute to that fund. So big thanks to everybody that contributes to the International Fund for Ukraine. These are things that the Ukrainians need, and they are grateful for it. Or at least I'm grateful on their behalf. I shouldn't speak for Ukraine. South of Pokrovsk, the Russians moved ahead about 100 meters yesterday. And it cost them 50 men. It's ridiculous. It's insanity. There's no real movement anywhere on the front line, but that is not to say that the front line is not an actively violent place in ways that you and I cannot imagine. It is. Russia has intensified attacks all along the front line. According to the Ukrainian MOD, Russia initiated 250 frontline clashes in the last 24 hours. So the front line is extremely, extremely active. In Brussels again, following his meetings with Zelensky, Rutte met with the Lithuanian Minister of Defense and congratulated Lithuania on its decision to permanently station a brigade of German soldiers as NATO troops in the country. So the Germans are moving to Lithuania and they're welcome. Wow, what a change from history, huh? How the tables have turned. Willkommen, mein Herr. So the Lithuanians are welcoming the German NATO troops. Lithuania is spending up to 3% of its federal budget, 3% of GDP on defense. They're walking the walk. Rheinmetall, in addition to the German troops there, Rheinmetall is opening a new plant for shell production that will create about 270 jobs in Lithuania. Rutte went on to call for increased defense production and spending across the boards for everybody in NATO. He said, we are prepared today for a war against Russia, which is convenient given that Ukraine has just demilitarized Russia, or is in the process. But we are not prepared for 5 years from now. So I'm very scared that Mark Rutte thinks that the conflict in Ukraine is going to be frozen and Russia's going to have the next 5 years to rearm. That's really worrying to me. That is just about the worst possible outcome we could have, especially for everybody stuck in there. In another friendly fire incident, Russia has lost another Ka-52 Alligator $16 million helicopter. So they shot down one of their own helicopters again. This is according to Fighter Bomber. Now, look, the Russians had about 140 of these at the beginning of the war. The Ukrainians have destroyed 50 of them. Another 12 have been damaged, likely beyond repair. That's 62 accounted for. But they've lost another 7. How'd they lose the other 7? In training accidents or in friendly fire incidents. And so the whole Ka-52 Alligator fleet has been cut in half since the beginning of the war, from about 140 to down to about 70 today, with 70 destroyed. Now, if you take all rotary wing losses, all helicopter losses in Ukraine in the last 3 years, it's over 320. I forget the exact number. That's about how many helicopters the Soviets lost in Afghanistan in 9 years, almost 10 years. So in 3 years, they've managed to triple the losses of helicopters in Ukraine. It's insane. The Swedish police have boarded the Yang P3. Now, the Yang P3 is that Chinese ship, hey, Chris Carter, is that Chinese ship that is accused of cutting the sea cables in the Baltic Sea. It has been held by half a dozen nations just off the shore of Sweden. And today the Swedish police boarded that vessel. We know now that ship was in touch, in live real-time communication with Russian intelligence while its anchor was dragging along the bottom of the Baltic Sea for 100 fucking miles. Sorry, 100 kilometers, 60 miles. There is a new upgraded thermite drone. Holy shit. It's like a fire-breathing dragon. It's unbelievable. Video appeared of them today, spotted in the Donetsk region, and they are just like flying flamethrowers from hell. I watched the video of this turn a Russian position into an inferno. It was unbelievable. I wouldn't say they're new Dragonfire drones. I would say, right, or Dracaris. They're calling them Dracaris, which is Dragonfire in the language of old Valeria, if I'm not mistaken. So the Dracaris drones have been given some kind of an upgrade, boy. Maybe it's just the volume of material it can spew forth simultaneous. I don't know. But, man, it burns. It burns. I cannot imagine the nightmare that it would be to face such a thing on the field. The Russian Council of Shopping Centers, which is a real thing, is predicting that 25% of shopping centers could face for bankruptcy and closure in 2025. 25%. It's like, remember when all the malls went out of business because of the internet? Well, the internet is finally catching up with Russia. The head of the shopping center council cited soaring costs, property tax hikes, and online competition as the main drivers of this of these near-term bankruptcies. He said that 50% of revenues are going to taxes these days. So the Kremlin has passed all kinds of new taxes to try to fund its war. And this is the practical upshot. 50% of revenues for shopping malls are going to taxes, with interest rates absorbing all the rest of the profits and more. So the interest on loans have ballooned and are consuming the profits of these shopping centers. Lastly, and give me a minute because this is a good, as CyberDoc, you'll like this, I think. You know, since the fall of Assad, there's been a lot of talk about who's next. Will it be Tehran? Will it be North Korea? Will it be Russia? Will the Georgians throw off the yoke of Russian oppression for real? Who's the next domino to fall? Well, kids, you know me, I love to be wrong, so I'm going to give you my prediction for who the next domino to fall is going to be and why. I think it's Transnistria. So everybody here knows that the Russians control 20% of Transnistria. It's the industrial heart of the country. And when you go there, you go through a border checkpoint, even though they're unrecognized by any international body as a sovereign nation. But when you go there, there's a border checkpoint, and it's a Russian army guy that's there. Everybody in the place speaks Russian. Russian is the national language. There are few Moldovans left there. Most of them have left. Everybody that's there is a Russian transplant. So it's a Russian imperial colony is what Transnistria is. What happens on December 31st of this year? On December 31st of this year, the Russian gas stops flowing through Ukraine, and suddenly Transnistria, the lights go out in Transnistria. They're going to be facing a crisis, an energy crisis, unprecedented in modern times. Their connection to the world, their last connection to the world is about to be severed. It's the middle of winter. You're going to have no heat. You're going to have no electricity. Everything that Russia's tried to do to Ukraine is about to happen to their colony. And it seems to me that after a couple of weeks of that, the Moldovan army ought to be able to walk in there and take the place back. So it seems to me that in the near term, we could see something very positive happening out of Moldova. But fingers crossed. Okay. Big thanks to Ballerina, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Thank you, Ballerina. And big thanks to the moderator team, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PTJ, and Travis. Big thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and to Lars, who has the Discord server and the Alexievich archive. And let's see, we got 9 minutes. 9 minutes. So questions, comments, points of personal need. I don't have any updates. As far as I know, the protests in Georgia continue. The protests in Georgia continue, and the police are increasingly violent toward the protesters. It doesn't look good. How will Moldova get gas? Moldova doesn't have Transnistria's problems. Moldova has ports. It can do LNG, and it's got access to the Trans-Alps pipeline, so it can get gas from Italy. Is that right, or is it Algeria? I'd have to look at a map. But the point is, Moldova has other sources of gas. Transnistria does not. Nobody is going to pipe it to them. Nobody is going to sell to them. Well, Lisa, thank you very much. Landlord, nobody knows what Trump is going to do. I certainly don't know. I was sure that we were done with this bastard. I was sure, that this copper-coated con man, that we were done with him. But no, somehow he is back, and I am sure it has to do with Russia. Good night, BT. Bobby, is my hoodie a clock symbol? Yes, it is a clock symbol. Does anybody get it? Does anybody get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? I don't know. Wait, is that reversed? Wait, now I can't tell. Oh, it's reversed in the camera. So you'd have to flip it, right? It's not 20 to 7. That's right, Jeff. You got it. Jeff and Dusty are on top of shit. It's 420 backwards, Chopper. Yes, it is. Johnny Taco gets it. Yeah, Colin, what's happening is the clock face is reversed in the camera. So it's actually 20 past 4 on this clock. Russia is why here's here. Hopefully it's changing. Where's... I don't know what that means, Lisa. Where are you? So in terms of dominoes to watch, I am watching Moldova. U.S. why Trump's here. Mm-hmm. 6 Ka-58s were destroyed in Syria. Good. Who destroyed them, though? The Israelis? The Israelis are doing everything they can to demilitarize the new regime, boy. And that's a very serious place to not have defense of your own. Putin in his presser said Russians are eating too much meat. Oh my God. Oh my God. They can't afford eggs. Hello, Savannah. Hello, Savannah. Pamela, you peach. Does Russia have a lot of captured U.S. equipment? Nah. They have some. How much time Assad's donation has propped up the Russian economy? Well, listen, there's no way that Putin is letting him keep the whole 135 billion, right? So Putin is likely to take it all. And I read someone is predicting that Putin is going to turn him over to The Hague. He's going to use Bashir al-Assad as a bargaining chip to get out of his ICC warrant. Right? So he's going to steal his 135 billion and then he's going to turn him over to The Hague. Which, of course, that is perfect Putin. Smokey, on the subject of captured U.S. equipment, if you take a look, if you do a search online for captured U.S. equipment in Red Square or in Russia on display, right? There's lots of pictures posted. Now, Smoke, here's the thing, though. Then pull up captured Russian equipment in Kyiv. Compare what the one Abrams tank that they have looks like compared to every Russian tank that the Ukrainians have. Holy shit, dude. The Russian stuff is destroyed. The Abrams looks brand new. They bent the barrel of it to make it look damaged on purpose after people were complaining that it looked so good in Red Square. They had to bend the barrel. And they didn't even do a good job of it. I mean, it's sad. It's sad, man. Pugga Mahone, you are a stronger man than me, I'll tell you. Any idea why the tank kills are way down, inventory issues? Walter, so Walter's question is, we used to see 25 tanks a day get taken off the battlefield. Today, we're seeing 4, 5, less than 13. Why are there so many fewer tanks being destroyed? Because there's so many fewer tanks. That's why. Because the Russians have the pictures of the storage yards. They're empty, man. They have scraped the bottom of the barrel. All that they have is committed at this point, or just about. Yeah, that's what it seems like. That is what it seems like. So now they're charging in on e-bikes, golf carts, desert buggies. I saw a Ford Topaz. Is it the Topaz? It was like an old Ford sedan. Maybe it's a model that's not sold in the United States, right? I don't know. But most of the frontal assaults that are happening the way that we saw the North Koreans go in, on foot, over open ground, and so they're getting slaughtered. What's not real, Mrs. Toad? You'll have to explain that. Well, it's yes, e-bikes, electric bikes, right? The kind that you turn the pedals and they generate electricity so it helps you go uphill. Electric bikes. Yes, no, that's a real thing. Just Google Russian soldiers on electric bikes. They're now the two-wheeled army. Don't laugh about the horses, because there were troops seen on horses. If they had ice cream trucks, they'd use them. That would be a step up from those Buhanka vans. At least they're refrigerated. No, the Koreans aren't getting any support at all. Well, the thing is, CyberDoc, if they live, they are going to end up in wheelchairs, a lot of these guys. No, it's crazy. So the Duma in Russia is getting ready to pass a law that will let the Russian army in Russia, not in Ukraine, but the Russian army in Russia, in Kursk, just commandeer any private citizen's vehicle at any time for any reason. And that's because they don't have vehicles. So they're getting ready to start stealing everybody's car to support the war. Don't you think with Biden we did not have enough military assistance to Ukraine to win the war? Yes, Aziz, I did. I was happy in the beginning with what Biden was doing, and by the end of it, the drip, drip, drip of support made me crazy. Made me crazy. I mean, just look at the glide bombs, right? For a year, the Ukrainians are telling us, let us use ATACMS to hit the airports where they launch these glide bombs from. These glide bombs are killing our people. Let us defend ourselves from these glide bombs. Nope, nope, no ATACMS in Russia. Nope, 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 no ATACMS in Russia. Finally, North Korea joins the fight, so we say, okay, use the ATACMS in Russia. Glide bomb hits are down 70%. 70%. That means 70% fewer Ukrainians are being unalived by glide bombs every day than were before. The Ukrainians were right. Like the way we second guess the Ukrainians when we get Russia wrong every time is enough to make me crazy. Once they got to the let's have meetings first disaster. I don't know what that means, Mrs. Toad. Can't wait till the orcs run out of everything and start launching pots and pans on Ukraine. That day is coming. Scott Ritter is a traitor. Scott Ritter, Colonel McGregor, Yaroslav, all these guys. And the one thing that they all seem to have in common is unspeakable to me. I won't discuss it because these people are so repulsive to me that the very thought of them and why they have betrayed their country makes me sick. And it should make any person of normal moral character physically ill. These fucking people. Steven Seagal. Did you see where the North Koreans are being found with 30-round magazines, 110 bullets? 30-round magazines. 30-round magazines with 1 to 10 bullets? Is that what you're saying, James? But no, I haven't been seeing that. What I have been seeing is that the Russians are burning the faces off of the North Koreans that have been KIA so that they can't be identified easily as North Korean. It's obscene. They are only giving 10 rounds of ammo to the North Koreans. Well, that's because the North Koreans aren't there to fight. They're there to die. I mean, that should be obvious to everybody. They are just there to get the Ukrainians to run out of ammunition. That's how these people think. And Kim Jong-un was happy to take $315 million for the lives of those men. And he's going to do it again. Oh, Scott Ritter. Well, I don't know about Colonel McGregor. I don't know what his deal is. I don't know why He's a little man with a big chip on his shoulder. He never made general, and it bothers him, and so he's become a traitor to the United States. That much is clear. Scott Ritter is definitely on Russia's payroll. There's no doubt about that. Ethelred, that is how that bastard thinks. You're right. No, Europe did not drag Ukraine into this war. Vladimir Putin poured 250,000 troops across the border. What are you talking about? What world do you people live in? Right, exactly. The aggrieved, they are easy to turn because they've got something to prove. They weak men. Read about military history. Maddie, you don't have to read about military history. Just read the newspaper, for crying out loud, to ask such a I mean, if you really believe that, there's something desperately wrong with you. If you're not getting paid to say things that are that stupid, you should go talk to the Russians, because they'll pay you to say those kinds of stupid things. Some of us have not been with the invasion from the start. But Colin, just by saying that, you acknowledge that it was an invasion. You clearly understand that Russia sent 250,000 troops across the border for their own imperialist ambitions. How did the West drag Ukraine into this thing? This is nonsense. Ukraine dragged the West into supporting it against Russia. That's the reality. And we have not done a good job. It's very disappointing to me. We could have done more here. We should have done more here. Honest to God, Laurel, right? It's so hard with the family. No, Titch, that's... The Budapest Memoranda is worth shit. There's no real security guarantees in there at all. So if you read the Budapest Memoranda, and I encourage you to, because it's short, it's a very short document. It's not 2 pages, at least the part that pertains to the U.S. So anyway, what was I going to say? What was the question? I thought it was only 100,000. So Titch, no. I think the number that commonly gets thrown around is 150,000. And the 150,000 were regular Russian troops. Then you got to add 50,000 Wagner PMC. That brings us to 200,000. Then you have to add something like 15,000 LPR, DPR troops each. That's another 30,000. So now you're at 230. And then you have to add in another PMC, right? So it was maybe 150,000 Russian regulars, but there was 100,000 other men from private mercenary companies, private military companies, as well as the Russian-aligned and backed People's Republic of Donetsk and People's Republic of Luhansk. Is it Luhansk? I think Luhansk. LPR and DPR troops. Altogether, 250,000 easily. Some estimates range as high as 350,000. So it was a lot of men and their machines. Oh, right. I forgot the Chechens. There's the Kadarovites. Musk torpedoed the federal funding for 2025. Musk hasn't done anything. Musk does not control the purse strings. The purse strings of the United States federal government are controlled by Congress, not Elon Musk. Take care, PT. I say every orc that ran away from Syria that gets thrown to the Ukrainian front is the best thing that could happen. Are you talking to me, Maddie? What are you talking about? Every single orc from Syria that goes to the front can tell the guys at the front, hey, it's okay to run away. We ran away in Syria. Yeah, you can run away. You can just run away. Best thing that could happen. Send them all to the front. Send them all to the front. Okay. Guys, it's got to be well past 1 o'clock now, right? Yeah. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors. Yeah. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors. Yeah. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors. Yeah. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors.